Call the meeting to order. Please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Welcome to the November 16th, 2021 Post Falls City Council meeting. We do have one public hearing tonight, and if anyone wishes to testify, there are forms on the podium in the back. Please fill them out, turn them in to Rhiannon, who's filling in for Shannon tonight. Rhiannon, please note that all council members are present with the exception of Councillor Wolf, who is excused tonight. Ceremonies, announcements, appointments and presentations. I have a few announcements. There's a public open house on 2 transportation improvement projects tomorrow, Wednesday, November 17th, from 4 to 7 p.m. at City Hall. The project locations are the Cecil Road and Poline Avenue intersection and the Cecil Road and Mullen Avenue median. This is a great opportunity to learn more about these projects and to provide input on the designs. City Hall and city business offices will be closed Thursday, November 25th and Friday, November 26th in observance of Thanksgiving. Police, fire, and rescue services for life-threatening or in-progress emergencies may be reached by calling 911. The police department will be open for walk-in emergencies. For water department emergencies, call 208-773-3517. The annual Winterfest and Market on 4th is Friday, December 3rd from 4 until 8 p.m. on the City Hall Plaza. Come enjoy a vendor market, hot cider, tree lighting ceremony, crafts for the kids, and a visit from Santa. Tonight, Council, I'd also like for approval to appoint Melissa Jeltness to the Urban Renewal Commission. We have a commission member who has served for many years, Larry Carsonson, who is retiring, and the position is open. We've met with Melissa, and I would like council confirmation on her appointment.
So moved.
Second?
Motion second. Further discussion. Rhiannon, please take the roll.
Thorson,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Borders,
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Motion passes. Melissa, thank you very much. And I'm sure that if they haven't, they will be in contact with you. Appreciate your willingness to serve. Are there any amendments to the agenda tonight?
There are none tonight, sir.
Are there any declarations of conflict or ex parte contacts and site visits? Seeing none, would you please present the consent calendar?
Item A is minutes from the November 2nd, 2021 City Council meeting. Item B is payables October 26th through November 8th, 2021. Item C is Villa Point North Minor Subdivision Plat Application. Item D is Post Falls Senior Apartments Grant of Utility Easements. Item E is Gondo Annexation Right-of-Way and Easements. Item F is Tullamore 9th Community Commercial Mixed Zone Change Development Agreement. And that is it.
Any questions on the consent calendar?
I'd move to approve the consent calendar as presented.
Second.
Motion seconds. Further discussion. Roll call, please.
Wilhelm,
Aye.
Borders,
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item on the agenda tonight is a public hearing, and this is the Build Right Homes zone change. And with that, I will open the public hearing.
Good evening, Mayor Jacobson, Council President Wilhelm, and council members. Ethan Porter, one of the planners here with the city. I'm here to present the Build Right Home zone change. The applicant for this was Olson Engineering on behalf of the owner Pleasant View Investment, LLC. The Planning Commission on September 29th recommended approval for this zone change proposal. And the applicant and owner are requesting that they rezone approximately 2.25 acres from industrial zoning to medium density residential zoning. Here you can see the project location. It's north of 90 and east of Woodbridge South and Woodbridge subdivision, right across the street from Flip and Storage. The water provided for this is East Green Acres Irrigation District in this area, and the sewer would be provided by the City of Post Falls. Currently, as you can see from the image, that the land use is vacant. There's currently nothing built on it this time. We look at the zone change review criteria within code, and it looks like the amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the comprehensive plan's future land use map, and the amendments to the zoning map should be in accordance with the goals and policies found in the Post Falls comprehensive plan. Both of those I will get to later in my presentation here. First off, starting with the future land use map. As you can see, it's pink. It's in the hatched black. It is pink. It stands for business commercial, and the yellow is residential, and the red is commercial. So you can see north is business commercial, to the west and south is residential, and to the east is a mix of business commercial and straight commercial. Business commercial, kind of going a little more into that and what that means. This category promotes a mixture of moderate, high-density housing types within walking distance of the city center, neighborhood center, and corridor commercial uses, as well as civic uses and other amenities within Post Falls. Within the comprehensive plan, we see that the implementing zoning districts with the business commercial falls in line with the limited commercial, community commercial mixed, technology mixed, R2, R3, Smart Code 4, Smart Code 5 per focus area. And so looking a little bit further at the focus area within this location, we see that it's in the Riverbend focused area, which, sorry for the text and the highlight, but highlighted there in that first large paragraph at the very end, it says potentially additional residential. So kind of it states this area should continue to evolve, attracting commercial business, high-tech companies, hotels, entertainment establishments, and potentially additional residential. With that, buffering between high and low intensity development patterns should be maintained, and employing the buffering and physical distances between those different patterns, which would be the case with our buffer requirements in code. So those are the two highlighted sections there, per the Riverbend focused area. Kind of looking at the zoning at hand right now, currently it's zoned as industrial, as you can see in the black hatch there. To the west would be the Woodbridge South and Woodbridge subdivisions, which is R1 single family. North you have industrial zoned, which is flip and storage right across Creative Way. And then to the east you have commercial zoning, which is the red. North you can kind of see there's a sliver of R2 to the north, right on the northeast corner of the Woodbridge subdivision there, right along Creative Way there to the north. So there is a little bit of R2 located in that direction. In the industrial zone, what can be permitted outright without going through a public hearing or anything, just a site plan review. You could, multiple manufacturing, we have a land use table within code. It goes through a lot of descriptions and land uses, but to highlight a few, there could be tobacco, rubber, metal, electrical manufacturing, as well as some construction uses and some miscellaneous manufacturing as well. That can be outright permitted without going through the public hearing process, just to give you an idea. Looking furthermore at the zone change review criteria, we want the zoning to be assigned following considerations of such items as street classifications, traffic patterns, existing development, future land uses, community plans, and geographic or natural features. We won't have to worry about number 4, as this is not a commercial or high-density residential zoning that they're requesting. And then the traffic patterns and street classifications will go into right here. Basically what we see on this map is the yellow line, street classification. North of the yellow, Jacqueline Road is the yellow, which is a minor collector. Just north of that on Expo Parkway, you see the green line, which is a minor arterial. And then south of Jacqueline Road along Expo Parkway, it transitions to a major collector. So the street classifications would support an R2 development in this site, as staff has mentioned as well in the staff report. So this just gives kind of representation of what's around there. And then Creative Way is just your typical local road that goes through there. Looking furthermore into the zone change review criteria, we see that the limited or neighborhood commercial and lower density residential zoning, which this would fall in place with that, that's typically assigned for properties as they proceed farther away from the higher intensity urban activity, which would be the case. It's also it's an infill development as well as next to already a R1 single family subdivision, the Woodbridge South and Woodbridge subdivision. So that would meet that requirement as far as being further away. It's not along a commercial corridor per se, but it's moving further west, or excuse me, east. You'd get into that Pleasant View road and then more commercial activity there, but that is further away. Industrial zoning, number 6, review criteria does not apply to this as it's already zoned industrial. They're asking for it to be changed. Looking at some of the goals and policies, starting with the goals, a couple of them I want to highlight within the staff report, G1 and G7, which is Goal 1 and Goal 7. Grow and sustain a balanced, resilient economy for Post Falls, providing community prosperity and fiscal health, as well as plan for and establish types and quantities of land uses in Post Falls, supporting community needs and the city's long-term sustainability. The housing need right now, definitely the mixed housing would be, follow along with the lines of R2, being medium density. Kind of gives you a little bit different than the single family and multifamily. It's kind of in between where you get a little bit of mix. So that would help out the housing need in Post Falls, as well as being an infill development would help the community and fiscal health of it as well. Through impact fees, you can see that public safety, streets, multimodal pathways as well would be addressed through impact fees as when development happens. So that's one way we would get our fiscal health and the community prosperity. Policy 1, we can see that it's maintain or enhance community level of service, foster long-term fiscal health of the community, maintain and enhance resident quality of life, promote compatible, well-designed development, and implement goals and policy of the conference plan. A lot of this you can see is being addressed in the staff report as well as my presentation. So a lot of those are addressed. Like I mentioned, impact fees. We do have design standards for certain housing types, so those would need to be met as well within code. So they would have to meet those requirements as well. Looking at policy 2, it's apply revised zoning designations with careful consideration of the factors including future land use mapping, which was discussed earlier, as you see in the future land use map, compatibility with surrounding land uses, as mentioned, infill development around single-family home, the road classifications meet that, which talks about existing and future traffic patterns. Infrastructure and service plans would be met through development and putting in the infrastructure in place, and then goals and policy of the conference plan, which currently going through now. With all that said, here's the agencies that were contacted for comments. And of these agencies, we received Post Falls Police Department remaining neutral. The Department of Environmental Quality, they had no environmental impact or related comment. And then Post Falls Highway District had no comments either. So I would entertain any questions you have at this time for
Questions for Ethan?
staff.
Steve?
Oh,
Yes.
so Ethan, just one question. These are proposed townhomes, not apartments, correct?
This right now is just the zone change, so it would just be changing the zoning. I will let the applicant go into furthermore of what they plan to do, if they have the idea yet, but right now, R2 would allow within the official bulk and placement table twin homes. They would be
Okay.
allowed twin homes. in
Twin
there.
homes, yeah.
Yes.
So if they were twin homes, would there have to be a buffer, say if they're facing the neighborhood, their backyards were up against the backyards of the existing R1 homes? Would there have to be a buffer there, or would that be just a backyard if it's in town?
Currently, it would just be a backyard. Currently, as code is written, it would basically be no buffer between single-family homes, because twin homes would be viewed as single-family homes just with one structure with 2 units, but they are separated through a lot line, so they would be viewed as single-family, so there would be no buffer requirement.
So it'd be just backyard to backyard?
Correct, yep.
Okay, thank you.
Joe?
I did speak to Mr. Manley on this, but just for the record, this is going to follow along the new R2 guidelines, not the old, correct?
Correct. So yes, the new R2 guidelines doesn't allow multifamily within the R2 zoning. And so they, in per code, to kind of get with Councilmember Anthony, your comment as well, or question was, basically 3 units or greater would then provide a buffer to single-family homes. So with these units, it would be 1 unit, so, or 2 unit per structure, but they are on their own lot, so
Okay.
technically looking at. So yes, it would be fall in line with the new R2 standards.
Linda?
Ethan, I saw in the planning and zoning notes that there was one person in opposition to this. Did you give the presentation at P&Z or?
Correct.
Yeah. And so what I'm getting at is the uses that it already is zoned for, manufacturing of rubber and, which obviously is kind of noxious. Number 2, the tobacco, things like that. Were the neighbors satisfied, do you think, with the explanation that you gave, that it was going to fall into the new R2 zone rules and that it was going to be no apartments there? How did you come away feeling about that?
There potentially could be some confusion as not everyone looks at code and the land use table itself, and so there's a slew of uses in there that could be under industrial zoning, and so I think if they're fearful of multifamily going in there, like Councilmember Malloy said, R2 no longer allows multifamily.
Right.
But as far as industrial zoning goes in there, I mean, they could be some uses that potentially aren't compatible with R1 single family, and so communicating that at the planning and zoning meeting. I mean, I guess I'm not sure. No one approached me, I guess, afterwards necessarily to discuss further on that, but
Okay.
I was making it seem like, the compatibility between industrial and R1 single family just they don't go well together because
Right.
of the type of uses that could be next door. And in that situation, if they did that, come through for a site plan, they would require a buffer. But still, that's still a use that potentially you don't want next to a single family.
Yeah, that's what I was kind of getting at, yeah,
So-
okay. All
Also,
right.
the new R2 didn't exist at the time it went through P and Z, so
Right,
there would have been a different concern then.
yeah, I understand. Okay, thank you.
Thanks, Ethan.
Yeah.
Applicant wish to speak. Name for the record, and we've got a timer on you.
Good evening, Council, Mayor. Jeremy Terzulli with Olson Engineering. I reside in Hauser, Idaho. Olson Engineering is based out of Post Falls, Idaho. I'm here to present on behalf of the applicant, Build Right Homes. To answer your question, Council President Wilhelm, the one dissent was a write-in letter. They were not present, and within their letter, they did try to liken this to the Remington Apartments on the other side of Woodbridge, and they talked a lot about a mid-rise apartment there, and that's not what we're proposing. So, and then I'll just jump in. As Ethan pointed out, and Post Falls tends to do this to me all the time, they basically make all of my points with regard to the future land use map and its compatibility. So I'll go through this area pretty quickly. As you can see, future land use map and our proposal is compatible with the future land use map, and we also agree that its current zoning would be a hindrance to the residents of Woodbridge. This proposal would create additional housing for single family, and to clarify that, our proposal, and it has been this way from the beginning, we've been very transparent with staff, that we plan to do twin homes here, which from the street will appear in essence like a duplex, but the property line lies on that party wall so that each unit can be owned individually, allowing people entry into the housing market. So this would in essence kind of close the loop on that island that is Woodbridge, and they would all be residential uses on that island with the neighborhood commercial and then the higher impact industrial uses on the other side of the street, hopefully further away. And I also listed some outright allowed uses within the industrial zoning right now that if they were to come before the city would be allowed through a simple site plan review. So then we jump into what I think everybody in this room already knows. You don't have to be in the industry or in the real estate community to understand what's happening in our area right now. And directly in the comprehensive plan, it addresses housing stock and specifically the need for additional lower to moderate income workforce style housing. So along that vein, prior to the P&Z meeting, I did perform a search on the local MLS with the criteria listed. A list price not to exceed $400,000, a stick-built house within city limits, and that was done about 6 weeks ago, and that search yielded 8 results. I performed another search today with the exact same criteria. There are currently 3 houses available in the city of Post Falls that are stick-built under $400,000, all of which were under 1,200 square feet. So I think this points out, again, what we all already know. We have a huge housing shortage right now. And I'm going to jump into my thoughts on that and what I think the data suggests on that here in a little bit. So, my wife is in lending. She does residential mortgages. So I had her run a scenario for me, and I said, all right, if somebody wanted to purchase a home for $400,000, you know, what would that look like? And so she said, well, you know, expand that a little bit. I said, okay, let's assume that person has the mortgage and their basic living expenses, and they have $800 a month in additional debt. So that would be a family with perhaps 2 car payments, maybe an ATV and a little bit of consumer debt. I said, put that at $800 a month, $400,000 purchase price. She said that family would need to gross $6,500 a month, which puts them about the median household income in Kootenai County as per the last census. So $400,000 purchase price, we just identified that there are 3 homes currently available in Post Falls that fall under that threshold. So this was provided to me by Jared Janke over at Alliance Title. This was year-to-date preceding the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting. And this shows you countywide sales, and I put the yellow line at that $400,000 threshold, and I think the data suggests that that median sales price is starting to move outside of the range of what most families in our community can afford. And then to update the data, I provided the month of October on the next slide, and the trend is continuing with the vast majority of sales occurring over $400,000, and again, that's countywide. So currently in Post Falls, this is the vacant land and the percentage of land available within the R2 and the R3 zoning is less than 5%. And for the product that we're proposing currently, those are the only 2 zoning designations that allow it outright without a special use permit. So there's very, very little land available to bring alternative housing products onto the market. And that's why we're here today, is to request on a smaller, less than 3-acre site to, in essence, take a stab at creating this twin home product and to see if we bring it to the market, it can help curb some of the housing crisis that we currently have. The fact that the workforce and people trying to gain entry into the housing market right now, simply, they're not a player in the game right now. It's just, it's not feasible for them. And I know there's a fairly vocal anti-growth sentiment within our community right now. I've presented presentations like this in Hayden, in the county, and some of the smaller communities around here. I was before you guys about a year ago for a similar product. And each time I go back to update my data, the trend is going in the same direction. We're not curbing it at all. And I don't think that that's anybody's fault exactly. This anti-growth sentiment that's growing, I honestly and sincerely believe that their heart is in the right place, but my data and my interpretation of the situation and my client's interpretation of the situation is that their idea is if we stop growth, if we stop annexations, if we stop approving these construction projects, that this demand will slow down, that the demand is going to slow down, and we can, in essence, wait it out, and then things will go back to the way they were. And based on my research and my talking with people, calling up the title companies and saying, who are the people we're sitting down with at the closing table? These are people coming from out of state. These are people that have seen the writing on the wall in other states, specifically California, Western Oregon, Western Washington, that are fed up with the politics there. And I believe when this insurgence is politically driven and people are sick of the restrictions, I've sat and talked to these people that say, I can't afford to run my business in California anymore. I can't afford to be here anymore, and I can't stand the politics. We're out. I think in the past that a lot of transplants to this area thought it would be cute to live in Idaho, and so they came up here, and I know most of us that have been here for decades would say, I'll just wait for the first bad winter, and they'll head out again. I don't see any evidence to suggest that this wave is going to subside if we kind of pull back and restrict growth. I think it is something that this community, that this city, that this new council that's coming in, I believe that they have concerns and an axe to grind with the development community. They need to extend an olive branch, try to bring them to the table, figure out where each other's blind spots are, and work together to bring some more diverse housing onto the market so that the younger generation has an opportunity to come into the housing market. Because if we continue to trend in the direction that we are, my greatest fear is that my kids who are going to be graduating the next couple of years will go off to college, want to come back and live in the community where they were born and raised, and they won't have an opportunity. I think all of us can look and say right now, if the trend continues, that will be the case. I think it's a simple matter of supply and demand. I think that the anti-growth sentiment, although it, having the best of intentions, I think that the whole argument is predicated on the supposition that we can wait this out, and I don't see any evidence to suggest this. Currently, the last time I checked, rental vacancy in the area was less than 3%, and I think we all recognize that rental prices are also moving in the upward direction. So we're kind of in that spot where you're either a renter or you're a homeowner. And if the trend continues, the only people that are going to be able to afford a home in this community are going to be transplant buyers. That's what all the evidence leans to, and I don't see anything to suggest otherwise. That's all I have for right now. Do you guys have any
I
questions?
have a question for you.
Go for it.
I don't know if it was you or someone else that presented a similar product, again, maybe a year ago. The question was asked then, I'll ask it again now. I like the idea of twin homes because it would, if it's the missing middle market you're trying to provide for, it offers an opportunity for those people to afford a smaller home, maybe as an entry-level home. What prevents the developer from starting these and having out-of-state investment money come in, and you know what happens, where you'll get a phone call from someone out of state saying, I want to buy them all, and they're going to put them on the rental market. Is there any way to prevent that from happening?
Council President Wilhelm brought that up, and it was me. And she said, you're damn right we can. And if you want to put your money where your mouth is, you can do it through the covenants. You can put it in the covenants that says the developer reserves the right to buy them back. If you're not in them for 2 years, there's a number of things, and I welcome the conversation, Council President, to help us draft that, because I know personally, I'm speaking from the heart. My client I met recently, I believe they're speaking from the heart, but I can't speak for them on that behalf, but I would encourage that conversation, and I kind of want them to put their money where their mouth is too, because I don't think you have to sell them to a developer. I think this thing will sell itself. And if we come in here with 28 units, which is what the density would allow, I think you're going to have a waiting list before you put a single stick in the air. I really, truly believe that, because I got from Jared over at Alliance, he sends me emails every week and gives me the update. And in mid-September, I got an email, and on the subject line, it said, average closed price countywide, $543,000 and 35% closed with cash. I did a double take on that. I called him. I said, this has got to be wrong. He said, it's not wrong. So I think if you can bring a product like this to the market in the low threes, I don't think you have to sell them to a developer. And I can't speak for my client just yet. We're still in the honeymoon phase, but I truly want he's a local guy, you know? He bought a bunch of the lots in the latest phase of Woodbridge, built some homes there, experienced some success there, and he wants to kind of lock down and put his crews to work over the next 2 building seasons and bring something to the market. It's a great question, and I really hope the development community heeds it and abides by that.
Good. If it's approved, hopefully that will be a conversation that will take place.
I truly hope so.
I preface this by saying I know this is kind of an unfair question, but you pull out $400,000 or less as your talking point for the breaking point for the average income. Is there any kind of commitment from the client to sell these properties once they're built for $400,000 or less? Or are they going to go for market value, which may be $550 or $600 at the time?
Well, it is kind of an unfair question, but I'll do my best. And it kind of, dovetails off of what the mayor was saying. I think the market would reject a $500,000 purchase price on a 3,000 square foot lot twin home. I do believe the market would reject it. It would certainly make sure that an investor wouldn't buy it because I don't think you could rent it for that amount. The commitment, he hasn't.
You don't have to answer that.
No, I mean, he hasn't indicated it, but I honestly believe, we live in a capitalist society. I think the market would kick that right back at the developer and say, try again. That's what I think would happen. But that's tough to say. I think that, I'm a shameless capitalist. I think he needs to price them what the market could bear, and I think the market would reject anything over the low threes. I really, truly believe that.
Yeah. Steve?
Just one quick question, because since we're on this subject and it doesn't pertain to this, it was about a year ago you were in front of us. And I think
Correct.
that project you had was similar to this, about
Correct.
maybe a mile away.
Less than a mile.
About less than a mile.
Yes.
Has that project started?
We're started. We're currently stalled
Okay.
due to funding. We took a little time to get through the design process because, again, it's not your single-family residential that just slams through. Everybody's kind of log-jammed right now. And I know that developer, same thing.
Yeah.
He was a custom home builder that wanted to break into being more development. This was a bite-sized project he could take on, and I know he's struggling a little bit right now to get all the funding together. But, Rob, we have an approved plan set on Teton, right? Okay, so we're real close on that
Okay.
one. It's just taking a little bit of time.
So there will be kind of a precedent set somewhere along the line.
Yeah, and that's another interesting point, that these guys are now going to be in competition with each other. If somebody comes in and tries to price it beyond what the market can bear, we have healthy competition.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll see you if needed at
Okay.
rebuttal.
Rhiannon, anybody
Thank
wishing
you,
to testify?
We don't.
So we have no testimony. With that, I assume with no testimony, you're okay not rebutting? Nobody? No. Close the public hearing. Council, decision's yours.
Well, for me, I think it's definitely an opportunity. It's better for the existing neighborhood that's there now to have an R2 development than a rubber plant or a solid waste disposal area, which wouldn't even come in front of us. So I think it's a good opportunity to at least lock down a use in that area that makes sense. The new R2 makes a lot more sense than the old R2. It's much more narrow in scope. It's a true medium density. It's not allowing for apartment buildings, fourplexes, anything like that anymore. So I think it's sensible there. To my unfair question, my point on that is we get a lot of presentations in front of us that present us with options that may or may not reflect any kind of reality. For me, I think it's my job to determine, okay, does what's being proposed make sense for that area? And any prognostications about what the market may do, about what people might want to live in there, who might want to do what with it, doesn't really matter. So with that said, I think that given the alternative of having something industrial there that makes no sense for anybody, this is a much better alternative.
Linda?
I would agree with Joe. I think it is a really good project for the location, and compared to industrial there, I think it will fit very well with Woodbridge, especially under the new R2 rules, so
See?
I'm ready to make a motion if nobody else
Yeah.
wants to speak.
Well, I think it's good too, because I think each unit having their own backyard, some green space with it, it's not an apartment complex, so it's some pride and ownership of having a lot, or at least something to take care of, and with at least some green space going with it, I think it fits there perfectly.
So I'd move to approve file number RZNE-00008-2021.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Rhiannon, please take the roll.
Thorson,
Aye.
Borders,
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item on the agenda tonight is unfinished business and returning items and ordinances, resolutions. Then the first item up was the Gondo annexation ordinance.
I'd move to place the ordinance, Gondo annexation, file number ANNX0009-2021 on its first and only reading while under suspension of the rules.
Second.
Motion seconds. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Borders,
Aye.
Wilhelm,
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Thorson,
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Wilson.
This is a fun one. An ordinance of the City of Post Falls, a municipal corporation of the state of Idaho, annexing property consisting of approximately 6.756 acres with a portion of Tract 1, Block 26, Post Falls Irrigated Tracts, Book C, page 78, records of Kootenai County, together with a portion of the Prairie Avenue right-of-way and a portion of the Greens Ferry Road right-of-way in the northeast quarter of Section 26, northwest quarter of Section 25, southwest quarter of Section 24, and southeast quarter of Section 23, Township 51 North, Range 5 West, Boise Meridian, Kootenai County, Idaho, providing for amendment of the official zoning map, providing for an effective date hereof.
Move to approve the ordinance, Gondo annexation ANNX-0009-2021, to direct the clerk to assign the appropriate number and that it be published by summary only.
Second.
Motion second. Discussion? Roll call, please.
Borders,
Aye.
Wilhelm,
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Thorson,
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Motion passes. Mr. Wilson, it's ordinances like that that always make me pleased that it's by summary only and by title only. Because if you had to read the whole thing, you would be here a while. Next item up is comprehensive plan amendment resolution.
I'd move to approve the resolution, comprehensive plan amendment, file number CPA-0001-2021.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Anthony,
Aye.
Borders,
Aye.
Wilhelm,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Next item under action items is contract with TO Engineers for the Post Falls Community Forest Phase 2 hydrogeological investigation and permitting. And that was a mouthful.
By summary.
Hey, good evening, Mayor Jacobson. I do have a quiet voice. Members of the council, I'm Alyssa Gersdorf. I'm the environmental specialist for the Utilities Division. It's a pleasure to be speaking to you guys tonight. I'd also like to just mention that Craig Bornpool is here in the audience if there's any further discussion needed. And this evening, I am requesting approval for a contract with TO for the Community Forest Phase 2 hydrogeological investigation and permitting. So it's been around 3 years since this project has been discussed with council, so I just wanted to start with some background just to kind of refresh your brains. The community forest is, let me grab this, although you can probably see it. The community forest is located south of the Spokane River, between Corbin Park and Chameleon Park, and south of the water reclamation facility. It's approximately 400 acres, and it's a multi-use facility, I guess, or property. 200 of those acres were purchased with water reclamation funds and called the Post Falls Community Forest Reuse Site, and delegated for the future reuse site. And the goal is to apply effluent via drip irrigation. In 2018, TO engineers prepared a tech memo for us that kind of listed out the steps for how we are going to develop the site as a reuse site. And then the first step of those steps is the phase 1 hydrogeologic investigation. And that was, the components of that phase were completed in 2020. And basically, phase 1, what we found with that, it provided the initial site characterization for the reuse site and developed the hydrogeologic conceptual model. So in basic terms, we took a look at the geology, kind of looked at how groundwater flows through the site, and came up with some recommendations moving on to the next steps, which brings us to phase 2. So you've seen this slide before, but don't worry, there's no test on it. These were the steps listed out for development of the site from TO, and it's always nice to kind of revisit where we're at and cross some things off the list. So we have completed the city entitlement process, we've done the boundary and topographic survey, and we have partially completed the hydrogeologic investigation, so it only gets partially crossed out. And that is because of the questions raised. So that brings us to tonight's proposed contract of phase 2 to conclude the hydrogeologic investigation, do the silvicultural plan, and those are the last pieces we need to actually fill out the permit application to send to DEQ and work through approval and issuance of a permit for the site. Which is exciting, right? Phase 2.
If I knew what silviculture meant.
We'll get to that. It's great. So the overall purpose of phase 2 is to build on phase 1 and get those remaining pieces. And so you just asked, what's the silvicultural plan? That's going to be taking a look at what the vegetation is out there at the site and looking at nutrient uptake, how can we manage the trees out there, prepare for forest fires, et cetera. That's the silvicultural plan. The next piece is the preliminary hydraulic management unit layout. So that is just another piece that's required for the permit, and that's going to take a look at where can we apply the water, how many acres, et cetera. And then getting into finalizing the hydrogeologic investigations, we are required to put monitoring wells out there. And from phase 1, if you've been out there, you know the topography is very varied. There's flat pieces, there's hills, lots of rocks. And so in putting in the monitoring wells, we need to do some geophysical evaluation to give us more data for siting those wells. And again, the geophysical evaluation, it takes, what that does is it sends an electrical signal into the ground, and the way it comes back up, you can kind of determine what's down there. Is it water? How deep is it? Basically gives us a better understanding of the geology so that we do a better job at siting the wells, because wells are not cheap. So with that, when we put in those monitoring wells, we can take some groundwater samples, we can get water level data, and then those wells in the future, once we are approved for a permit, we are required to take samples to, once we start land applying water, we need to take samples to see that we're meeting all regulations. So all part of the big process of getting our permit, but phase 2 takes us to that point of submitting our application, working through the steps with DEQ, reviewing it, and then issuance of the permit. The project timeline for this is to be on site this winter, prepare the reports this summer of 2022, and project completion by fall 2022. The total cost is $208,565, and this takes us to getting that permit. All the pieces put together, permit submitted to DEQ. And I just did want to point out that it does not include the cost of drilling the wells, because that cost will still be determined based on what we find from the geophysical part as to how deep is it going to be, et cetera. But it does include the cost of designing those wells and overseeing the monitoring well installation. And finally, this was budgeted for in this fiscal year 2022 under contracts professional. I just wanted to point that out. And at this point, I'd like to take any questions.
Any questions for Alyssa? If you got questions, you're going to be a lot smarter than me. It's obviously very technical. Thanks for all the information you provided. No questions?
I was just grateful that we have someone like you on the job here at the City of Post Falls.
Yes, thank you. Glad to be here.
I'd entertain a motion.
I'd move to approve the contract with TO Engineers for the Post Falls Community Forest Phase 2 geological investigation and permitting.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Roll call, please.
Malloy.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Porters.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Alyssa, thank you very much. Next item up is Tullamore Park easement grant and acceptance.
Good evening, Mayor, members of council, Robbie Quinn, Parks Planner, and I'm here seeking council's approval for the grant and acceptance of reciprocal parking and access easements between the City of Post Falls and Heritage Baptist Church. So back in September, Dave had presented an addendum to the Tullamore Park contract, which basically would swap Copper Basin's obligations for our sports complex cleanup, and now they're going to be constructing a parking lot for us at Tullamore Park. And so the red line is just kind of the general location for the north parking lot, which they will be constructing for us. And this right here is the Heritage Baptist Church property parcel. And so these are kind of the general, in your packet, they have the actual exhibits, and these are kind of the general layouts of those exhibits. And so this essentially is the parking lot for the church, future church. And the idea was, instead of having two abutting parking lots that weren't connected, we would allow that connection flow through for traffic, as well as increase parking capacity for both entities. And hopefully reduce conflicts between the two of us as well by granting reciprocal parking and access easements to each other. And with that, any questions?
Was there only the one access point, or was there an access point on the north part as well? Blue.
Yeah, so this is our approach right here.
Okay.
So it'll be able to flow through either way.
Okay.
Makes good sense. I think it's good use of.
Yeah, whether or not there's
Community
agreement, the
resources.
public's going to use each other's lots
Exactly.
anyway,
Anyways.
so we might as well make it official and make it easy.
Because I would imagine that the uses of the church and the times of the uses of the park there for concerts and things are probably
It's different.
going to
time.
overlap.
Yeah, exactly.
Entertain a motion.
I would move to approve the Tullamore Park easement grant and acceptance.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion. Rhiannon, please take the roll.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Malloy.
Aye.
Thorson.
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Anthony.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thank you. Thanks, Robbie. Next item up on the agenda is new business, and the first item is Live After 5 weekly concert series agreement extension. Ryan, should I tell the council what I told you earlier today?
You're welcome to.
I'm really suffering from hair envy.
And I gave you a little insight into when it gets cut, so we'll see if that ever happens. No, I joked with the mayor that I'd have to go a week without hearing the word COVID to cut the hair. I think I might give in before then. Good evening, Mayor and Council. Brian Myers, Parks Manager, Parks and Recreation Department. I'm back this evening, again, talking about the Tullamore Park site, kind of extending on with the topic that Robbie had. So right next door, over the last 3 years, we've hosted Live After 5 events, hosted the site for a private operator to conduct their concerts at that site. So taking us back to 2019, when we first considered that, the park was not constructed yet. It was just recently hydroseeded, but had not grown in. And we still had the shelters to finish construction on when you contemplated this action. There was some discussion at the first meeting in February of 2019, and we brought back some changes in March, and council approved that contract. That contract allowed for up to 1 3-year extension, and that's what we're here tonight discussing. So we opened up with Live After 5 following the opening of the park the first day of summer in 2019. The weekend after that was, or the Thursday after that was 4th of July. So we skipped that week, and then the following week was the 11th for our first concert. 2020 presented some different challenges, and they had a shortened season. And then last year, the 2021 season was also shortened ever so slightly, partially because he was trying to correct for the 2020 season because he had paid sponsorships for that previous season and needed to continue on that way. So again, event promoter, they've got an experienced brand, or an established brand in the community through the concerts they operate in Coeur d'Alene, and the attempt to try to extend that into Post Falls. Saw some big successes in 2019, 2020, and 2021 had their own challenges, and one of the big challenges, as many of our businesses in the community are faced with, is employment, and he had a trouble finding food vendors to be able to support the events this past year. Otherwise, things went well, the concerts went well, and he was able to deliver on the contract terms. The contract includes a use fee of $500 per concert, deposit to cover any challenges that we may have saw with the site. We didn't experience anything over the past 3 years with his move in and move out of vendors and the like. Staff review is available for 45 days prior to the first event. That communication has all been pretty seamless, and we saw each of the 3 years looking much like the first. And the primary item has been just identification of vendors through that discussion has been the big need as far as what we need to discuss at that point. Sound level considerations, we did have a couple of sound complaints over the 3 years, and we did provide an update at the midpoint of this contract to council to discuss what had happened and what discussions had come from that. We do still get some of those. Not going to mix any words there. Those do come up. And if they're called in at the time to the PD or to the Parks Department, we're able to go and monitor at the site of the complaint. If it's an anonymous complaint, there's really not much we can do within the contract as it states. So if we don't know where the sound issues are being presented, it's hard to try to correct. And we're willing, and the promoter has been more than willing to try to make those corrections, and has even identified where those potentials would be and pointed us to monitor sound at different locations, particularly with the new apartments that went in on the back side of the site, or the east side of the site, to try to make sure as he changed his DJ or his sound professionals, they had a little more bass, and he was concerned that there was maybe a little more sound to the rear of the stage, and so we added that as a monitoring site. Fire protection requirements that KCFR has in place, that all goes pretty seamless, and he gets those permits. We have additional off-site parking considerations for large events. So far, Live After 5 has not pursued one of those greater than 2,000 people events at that site, and he's indicated what his ideas are on trying to locate additional parking and trying to secure that with additional property owners that are surrounding the area, but we haven't had that need. If that is something that's presented and he plans to move forward with, we'll plan to do a staff report to council, just so you're aware of what the plan is and how he's planning on mitigating that sometime after that 45-day meeting. And then there's insurance and liability considerations to protect the city. Just briefly, the sound monitoring considerations, they're allowed to go up to 95 decibels at the mixer, 85 decibels at the furthest property line, and 80 decibels at the nearest residential property and residential zone. The 65 was pre and post event during move in, move out. So just a picture of the event if you haven't had a chance to make it there or wonder what happens with the staffing side of things. Park's impacted from 8 a.m. to 10:30 each day, and the move-in generally starts sometime 9, 10 o'clock in the morning. At that point, our staff is available for on-call response if they have any issues as they're doing their setup. We try to have a staff member there about the time that the stage rolls in, just conducting other chores in the park to monitor what that looks like. And we have had very little issue and have developed a level of trust with his drivers and such. So we're able to move that along a little easier and tend to other things in the park a little more readily than we did at the beginning. His other vendors begin to show up sometime between noon and 2. Sound monitoring, sometime around 3 o'clock is when we start that initial sound monitoring as they're doing their sound checks. Gates open at 4:30, event starts at 5, event ends at 8:30, and I haven't seen that extend beyond the 8:30 time frame more than a couple minutes and those were only on rare exceptions. By 9 p.m., for the most part, everybody's moving out, fences coming down, and the park's starting to turn back to normal. By 10:30, the park's clear with the exception of the stage. We've allowed him to leave that in place just to prevent any damage to the park site and let them move that out in the daylight hours the next day. Just feel like it's safer for his group and the public. So again, I already kind of outlined what the city staff impact is. Mostly it's on call until that 4 p.m. period of time, and then our staff is there monitoring the public's activity and sound level considerations. Two main complaints, sound. We've had a handful of those, no more than 2 on any one individual event to my knowledge. And then we recently had portable restroom, the location of those, because they were right up next to a couple of apartments, and those weren't there a year and a half ago. So just a quick change once we were made aware of that issue. And then we had some miscellaneous infrastructure troubleshooting, GCFI breakers that needed to be swapped out, that sort of thing, but very minimal. So with that, I'll stand for questions.
Questions for Brian? Carrie?
Is that contract site-specific to Tullamore?
It is site-specific to Tullamore, and it is basically a line 75 feet from the top of the berm eastward to the property line is what he has authorization to use. And
So that contract wouldn't necessarily might give them a foot in the door to do concerts at, say, the upcoming Park at the Landings?
not with this contract
So
specifically.
it would have to be separate contracts, even if it was the same company?
Correct.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
I think it's a great family event, and I'd move that city entered into an agreement with Live After 5 for a 3-year extension for putting on concerts on Thursday evenings.
Second.
Motion second. Further discussion? Roll call, please.
Thorson,
Aye.
Malloy,
Aye.
Anthony,
Aye.
Borders.
Aye.
Wilhelm.
Aye.
Motion passes. Thanks, Brian. Next item up is the Title 12 Housekeeping Ordinance. Mr. Manley.
Good evening, Mayor Jacobson, Council President Wilhelm, and members of City Council. John Manley, Planning Manager, presenting the request to amend Title 12. In particular, it's the driveway approach within the right-of-way. It's Section 12-1260 within Post Falls Municipal Code. So the reason why we're requesting amending this section is we are getting some smaller lots, and even in the past, some other subdivisions have had some wide driveways widths within the right-of-way. And when we have wide driveway widths, it can prove detrimental in swell area, snow storage areas, potentially affect on-street parking. So by having the proposed 40% ratio from the lot width to driveway widths within the right-of-way, it increases that swell area that allows for increased snow storage and allowed for additional street parking, as well as provide more space for garbage services. You saw in the staff report, Public Works made a comment that they were encouraged by this as it'll assist them as it was otherwise allowed. I provided in the staff report here the differences in the proposed 40%. You know, some of the 30-foot wide lots, that would max that out at 12 feet in the proposal, which allows 18 feet for that on-street parking so that you can have that there, versus the existing, you could get 20 feet. So you'd see now as the current, you could get 67%. You can kind of did this on a single driveway approach. A 40-foot, you see the max at 16 versus potentially 30 now. A 50-foot lot, 20 versus 32. So you get significant increase on what's proposed. I did run by this by the development community. A couple individuals, they didn't seem like the proposal would negatively impair their product either. I also had some additional notes here that was in the staff report that I already kind of commented on, that single, but double residential driveways you'd have to have a lot greater than 60 feet, but they would combined would be at 30 feet. And so that would ensure, once again, frontage available. Commercial driveway approach really isn't changing. It's currently at 40% and currently maxes at 40 feet, so nothing's changing there. Any questions on the proposal or anything that was in the staff report on this request?
Don't see any.
All right, thanks.
You need a motion for that? Or does that come back?
It's an ordinance, so we'll bring that back at the next meeting for adoption.
Good. And you don't need a motion to bring it back, it'll just come back?
No.
Okay. Thanks, John. Next item up is a proposed ordinance to address safety concerns around the Post Falls dams.
John, before you sit down, if you want to flip that up for me.
And I got to tell you, I looked at the pictures. I think they're the pictures of pure craziness when I see some of the people out there. I was amazed at what I saw in those photos.
That was me when I
Yeah.
was a kid.
So,
I know. That's what I mean.
good evening. Tonight I wanted to present to you some proposed changes to our Chapter 844, which is our river safety ordinance, essentially around the dam facility. For many years, we, in conjunction with Kootenai County, have had an ordinance that essentially tries to keep people safe around the dam. Currently, it just applies above the dam. So but between the boater safety cable and the dam, people are always prohibited. But between the boater safety cable and the bridge, that's closed seasonally. It's sort of key to when the boat launch opens, and you know you're safe to go there. Signs are posted. But when it's not safe, you can't enter that area of the river between the bridge and the boater safety cable. There has been, over the last several years, some incidences that have been occurring below the dams, creating some additional safety concerns. And so probably, call it 2.5 years ago, Avista approached the city and the county to take a look at maybe creating some regulations for how we monitor the river below the dams to try to keep people safe in those areas as well. I know that, I think it was 2 years ago, county sheriff's deputies, people from the police department, myself, we met with some of the safety staff over at the facility and toured and looked at some of the things that they're dealing with. I think you've seen some of the pictures. And so what we're trying to accomplish is adopting regulations that keep above the dam remains the same. You have that seasonal closure area that is tied to when the essentially the dam is closed every year, that you can't be in that area seasonally. But below the dams, and you can see that's the area hatched in black on the above, below the dam, those areas would always be closed to access. That's the gist of what the ordinances are trying to accomplish. I would mention that the vast majority of this area is in Kootenai County. That's why we have sort of these reciprocal ordinances. Only a small portion of this area is in the city limits. The county has already adopted this ordinance, so we're just following along, addressing our sliver of the area that's within city limits. Mac Mickelson from Avista is here tonight. He's well prepared to talk to you about the safety implications that they're saying. If you have any questions for him, or if you have questions about how the ordinance functions or what it does, I'm happy to answer those as well.
Thank you. Again, when you see the pictures, it kind of jumps out at you, but I would see if anyone's got any questions, or if you care to share anything, feel free.
Oh, just evening, Council, Mayor. Appreciate you guys having me tonight. The only thing I'd add to that, and thanks, Warren, for going through it. We've been dealing with public safety out at Post Falls Dam since literally hundreds of years, but 1989 was the tragic event that really kind of got this brought under a microscope, and I hate to bring that up, but 3 people died, and the last thing we want ever to happen again there is to lose another life and have that conversation with the family and of those family members, the survivors. So, my phone. So we really appreciate the partnership. I've spoken with the chief a lot, the sheriff with Kootenai County as well, and we just want to make sure that we're doing everything that we can to make sure that the public is safe. I know the Parks Department's done a wonderful job of providing other sites that accommodate recreational use really close by, and we just feel like the dams and the areas around those are just not fit for that. So that's the whole purpose of this. The other thing is, I was pretty excited to see that both the city and county were in favor of reducing that penalty from a misdemeanor crime, at least for the first couple offenses, to like a notice of infraction or what have you. I think that gives the officers a better chance to go out and have, discretion, give them maybe a stern warning at first, but if they do need to write a ticket, it's kind of like getting a parking ticket. And I just feel like my background was in law enforcement. I feel like that's a win for the city. I think it'll be easier to enforce and educate the public that want to keep going out there. So, again, happy to take any questions.
I was saying last summer was the first time I've ever heard the recorded voice warning people to get out of a restricted area, and I heard it a mile north, so it was the first time I'd ever heard that. So I know there are people that don't necessarily want to abide by the rules, so whatever we can do, I think, to help ensure the safety is important.
Thank you.
Will this come back as an
Which
ordinance?
would come back as an ordinance at the next meeting if that's the direction council wants to go.
Yeah, I think as the population continues to increase too, we'll see more and more problems. So the time is probably right.
Not everyone was here in 1989. The one survivor, the young boy, we're still in contact. He lives in Chicago now and is a grandfather. But I think he was about 10, but he was the only survivor. Bobby Pearl. Nice to see you away from the dam.
Yeah.
Away from the park.
We need to go on a tour again.
Yes.
Thanks for taking the time to come over and sit through. It wasn't too long a meeting to get to your part, but sometimes it is, so we appreciate your time.
Yeah.
Good.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Have a good evening.
Next item up is citizens' issue, and this section of the agenda is reserved for citizens wishing to address the council on a city-related issue that is not on the agenda. Seeing none. Administrative staff reports. We do have 2 tonight. Water reclamation tertiary project update. It's either complicated or long. We've got 2 guys coming up.
I know.
We'll shoot for both.
Okay.
Just what I wanted.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. I'm John Beecham, Public Works Director. And with me tonight, reintroducing Andrew Arbini. Andrew actually has a new title for us. He's now the Public Works Projects Division Manager. So we've taken the success from the projects he's done for us in the Utilities Division and brought that into more broadly Public Works projects. So you may see him on some streets and facilities projects in the future. Tonight we're here with our sort of regularly scheduled 6-month update on the tertiary treatment project at the Water Reclamation Facility. This has really been over a decade in the making, and we're finally building it. I will go through just some of the background for those watching elsewhere who might not be aware of the project, but sort of where we came from, and then we'll talk through what we've been up to for the last 6 months and where we're headed. There's really 4 goals with this project. The first and foremost is we have a compliance schedule built into our discharge permit that requires us to build this project by the end of November 2022. This also anticipates growth that may be coming in the next few years, so it adds on capacity when it's cost effective to do so. And then as we've made decisions, we really wanted to make this a long-term investment. So if there's an option between the better option that saves us money in the long term and saving $5 today, we took that long-term investment approach. And we're trying not to be back building another upgrade in a couple years. So this is building all the projects at once versus a whole bunch of them in a row. Where we are in that process is the construction phase. So our compliance schedule started in 2014, and here we are in 2022, nearing the final year of our construction phase. And with that, I'll let Andrew talk about sort of what's in the project and how it's going.
Thank you, John. Thank you for the introduction. I promise to keep my portion short. This is a familiar slide, and as John mentioned, that the compliance schedule started in 2014. So in 2013, the facility master plan identified really the 3 main components that we're building currently as part of this project: installing a new tertiary treatment system, replacing the existing UV disinfection system, and that will meet the new reclaimed water standards. And then finally, we're upgrading secondary treatment system. So that includes a new clarifier and then making modifications to some of the existing infrastructure inside the facility. So the next few slides will go quick because they're pictures, and I like pictures. So this gives you a little bit of an overview. I think I had a couple pictures from our last update. So hopefully this shows some more progress, because there has been a considerable amount of work that has happened in the last 6 months. Kind of get bearings on this. You can see I-90 in the background off to the right. So in the middle of the picture where the crane is one of the tertiary treatment facilities. That's plate settler treatment. So that'll be a new building. Directly behind it is the membrane treatment facility. And then off to the right, it's hard to see up on the screen, but that's the new UV building right along parallel next to I-90. So the next few pictures just show some of the progress that we've made since the last update we gave in May. This was actually taken in January. This is the membrane building, that structure in the back on the previous slide. This was the slab with the rebar sticking out, again, taken in January. Not much to look at. When you look at this picture, there's a lot that's happened since then. That was for the wet well portion of the facility. So that's essentially been built and constructed, and they're continuing to make progress and move along on the rest of the building. This is a picture of the UV, just showing some of the complicated construction that occurs. This is the intake of the UV, forming up walls. You can see pipe spools, working on rebar, getting ready for concrete pour. This is a concrete pour of that same building. The water channels inside the building, you can see there's a lot of angles, a lot of concrete, a lot of sequencing and things that have to happen before the next phase. So it's very intricate work in a lot of ways. And this is a picture of the tertiary building, so the plate settler building that I mentioned where that crane was parked. This is a look inside. There's really 3 separate channels, and there will be treatment equipment that will be placed inside each one of those. So that's the last of my picture, but I'll go through these next few slides with more detail on the construction, the financial component, and where we are in our schedule. So a recap of the contract. The original contract award was for $36.6 million. We have a 5% contingency of $1.8 million. So a total cost of just under $38.5 million. So change orders to date, we presented at the time in May, I believe we were up to, hard to see the dates, I think we were around change order 14 at that time. To date, we have had 25 changes, and some of those, the majority of the changes are additive changes to the project. There are some credits that are included in this. Total change order cost today is $150,000, just over that. And that's out of the $1.8 million contingency. There's 3 lines that are highlighted in gray, and those were change orders that we pulled out in a previous presentation just to expand on that were either interesting or just to provide additional detail of what those were. There's 2 items that have occurred since then, and those are highlighted in green. So I wanted to expand a little bit on those 2 items in particular. So change orders 17 and 18 are related. They relate to some unsuitable fill that we discovered during the excavation of the UV and the chemical storage facilities. So when the contractor went to excavate per the project plans, they discovered undocumented and unsuitable fill that we assumed would be native. So that total cost was $40,000 to rectify that. Again, that was out of the contingency amount, and I have a slide later on that will summarize overall where we're at on that. Construction schedule. So it's an interesting time to be building. We've broken this down into 2 different categories, a formal and informal. So formally, our contract started September 14th, 2020. We have added 10 days to that contract. Our contractual substantial completion today is October 14th, and that includes the 10 additional days that have been added related to change orders. And then the permit compliance deadline with DEQ is November 30th of next year. Informally, we have been receiving notices of supply chain issues I'm sure everyone is aware of at this point. This project has not been insulated to that. So what that looks like are material delays, equipment delays, instrumental into starting the project at startup, which is still a year out, but components that are needed today and in the near future to continue progress. To date, we have been able to mitigate to a certain degree, and I think quite successfully with the contractor, a lot of those delays, a lot of those challenges. The contractor has been able to order materials as they're escalating. They're able to order materials early and equipment early to lock in at that price and allow things to be in manufacturing in progress and at least on its way sooner than later. So they have been helpful in that process. But we are likely to see this continue, and we are continuing to see notices come in. So somewhat related to that, we have a potential change that the contractor has proposed in the design. So during the design of the facility, there was an alternative electrical main power feed route that was considered by our consultant engineer at the time. So this was pre-supply chain, pre-COVID. That option just didn't pencil out for simplicity. It was not a feasible option, and so the plan design as it is currently is what the contractor has been moving forward with. Because of material price increases and changes, supply chain issues, all of those coming together, the contractor has proposed a version of that original option that our consultant had actually looked at. So that has been in discussion and currently looking at potential alternatives around that if we can find a solution that would be beneficial for all parties. So listed some of the components there. It would add 2 generators in lieu of the main power feed that we'd be working off currently. And then Ultimately, it's driven by whether or not we would pursue this change would be determined off of our long-term operability and the city's best interest. So there will be likely more coming as we work through more information on this. So overall summary, I promised this a few slides ago. So contract award, have the total cost. To date, the city has paid almost $15 million to the contractor for work completed to date. So that's about 40% of the total contract cost. Contingency is at 1.8 and utilized 150 of that, 150,000. So 0.4% of that of the total contingency amount. So overall, I think the key part here is that our rolling change order rate is currently at 1%. That's down 1.9% from May of this year. So good news, as I mentioned earlier, likely to see more changes coming and dependent on supply chain. With that, I'll transition to John and speak a little bit more on the engineering side.
Sure. So we have a big contract with Sletton Construction for the construction of it. We also have a big contract with JUB to oversee that construction, and they were the design engineer as well. We have a management reserve of $120,000 on that contract, and it was a little over $3.6 million. We mentioned this at our last update. JUB is developing a scope of work with H2E Engineering. They're a SCADA and automation consultant to basically reprogram and integrate our existing system with the new system. We're adding more controls than we currently have, so we're more than doubling our control system. We've known this is coming. We authorized H2E to, under JUB's existing contract, using those additional services to get plugged into the system, answer initial questions that were coming in from the contractor. They are finalizing a major amendment to JUB's scope that would bring us through the programming phase for the whole project. So that will be coming back to you. That it will exceed that $120,000 management reserve, and the point of that is it's the SCADA programming that needs to get wrapped into the project. So we didn't know at the beginning of this project what we didn't know. We had to hire JUB and then H2E to help us understand what actually needs to go into that and build a scope that we felt comfortable bringing before you. The sole adjustment to JUB's contract is that authorization for to bring H2E on as a sub. I was going to talk a little bit about the overall finances of the project. So this slide is a little deceptive. What you see are the budgeted amounts in the annual city budget versus what was actually spent in that year. And the good news is we didn't exceed the budget. The bad news is, as you look at this, the expenses are protracting out a little bit. So it's not that the project has gotten less expensive, it's that it will likely be spread over more than those 5 fiscal years we see. There are a lot of numbers on this slide, and what I really want to highlight is kind of the changes and the differences and the percentages of each of those. So working the way down, JUB's construction or JUB's contract has changed about 1% of their overall contract. That's with the design phase of it. All West contract, we had a placeholder when we came before you the first time, so it's not really a decrease, but that is down from our budget estimate. And our contract for wage compliance is unchanged. Andrew talked about the Sletton contract. So when we put these numbers together and put them into the financial model at the time of bid award, we had a 5% contingency for the whole thing as a placeholder. And we're doing pretty well on that currently. When I talked to you, that was found to be within our rate model. We had the money to pay for it. The loan funding we have works with this price. So the reason I want to mention that is we're we're still on track with the bigger picture budget that's built into that 2013 master plan. And as changes come forward, which our slides in a second will say they are likely coming, we will be framing it in that regard too. How are we doing with the overall big picture budget as opposed to the working budgets on an annual basis? So I think that's what ultimately matters is are we staying true to the master plan and that rate model? Talking about next steps now, another thing we're doing this year is preparing our operations for bringing this all online. It's one thing to build it, but we have to operate it forever as well. So we're anticipating that we'll be bringing, and we've been planning in our rates to bring on 3 staff to operate this. We have approval in this new budget to bring on a lead operator to be part of the construction for the last year. So we'll likely be recruiting for that soon. There is training that will happen this year as well as next year. And then in the FY23 budget, you'll see requests for additional chemicals, additional energy that will go into actually operating all these new pieces of equipment. Once we get the project completed, we do have a 2-year optimization period that's built into our compliance schedule. So that lets us try it out before we're required to meet the new permit standards. In terms of immediate next steps, Andrew mentioned we may or may not be before you with a change order for the electrical service. We haven't reviewed that in enough detail to know if it makes sense. If it looks like it will be improved operations, better investment for the city, we will bring that before you, as well as a SCADA sub-consultant agreement. And then it is likely that, if I'm being honest, some of these supply chain issues will not be resolved with mitigation within the existing contract as they have been currently. So we will likely be before you with a proposed solution to a large problem that's arisen. As of yet, I can't tell you what that problem is, which is great because that means we haven't got there yet. In addition to those things, we'll continue on this 6-month cycle of just sort of overall how's the project going updates. With that, do you have any questions?
A lot of work being done. Any questions of John? Andrew?
All the dirt. Thank you.
Appreciate the information, the updates. Yeah, it's a huge project, so appreciate you keeping us posted on it.
Thank you.
Thank you both. Next item up is a project update notice of upcoming public open house for transportation projects.
Good evening, Honorable Mayor, members of the council, Robert Paulus, Assistant City Engineer. City staff has been working on 3 transportation projects, and we're getting close to the point where we think that in January and February of 2022, we'll be bringing these projects to you for going out to bid and then construction in the spring and summer of 2022. We're going to be having a couple of open houses, and Mr. Mayor, thank you very much for mentioning the first one tomorrow evening at the start of this meeting. At Poline Avenue and Cecil Road, we're looking at doing some improvements, and also at Mullen and Cecil. Both of those projects are being funded by the Urban Renewal Agency, and there's a little bit of city funding also in the Poline Cecil Improvement Project. We'll then be having a second open house on December the 8th here at the City Hall in the Rotunda, and that's for the Prairie Avenue and Spokane Street project. These open houses are important for us in that it gives us a chance to present the projects to the public, let them see what we're doing, how it's going to impact the neighborhoods around them and where they drive on a daily basis, and also give us some feedback as to problems they see and making sure that we're addressing as many of their issues as we can to make these improvements safe for the general public and helping people not only in vehicles but in walking on sidewalks as well. The first project we're looking at is Poline Avenue and Cecil Road improvements. This is just showing where collisions have been occurring between 2016 and 2020. It's not one of the highest collision locations in the city, but it has had 14 collisions in the past 5 years. A lot of those collisions deal with limited sight visibility in the southeast corner by the high school and people trying to make left turns from Cecil Road onto Poline Avenue or trying to make left turns from Poline heading south on Cecil. What we're looking at doing is constructing either a roundabout or a traffic signal at that location. We've already gotten the most current traffic counts about 2 months ago out there. We've done some analysis. It looks like a roundabout is going to be the preferred option, and we're starting to move towards the design of that. But this is one of the areas where we're going to want to get some feedback from the general public. We've had some discussion with the Federal Highway Administration. They think that a roundabout would be a very good option, especially with the school in that area, in helping keep traffic slower and providing a little bit more guidance for pedestrians to have a refuge area as they cross the intersection. In addition to putting in a traffic control device, we'll be putting in some curb and gutter to put in what's missing on the north side, and then also putting in some missing segments of sidewalks to help get people who walk a lot from the Tullamore area and the county residential area in the southeast corner over to the school in a safe manner. This is just a conceptual layout of what a traffic signal would look like there. We would be providing 5 lanes of traffic on the west side of Cecil Road, so between Greens Ferry and Cecil, right in front of the 2 schools. Between Cecil Road and Highway 41, that would become a 3 to 4 lane facility. And then Cecil Road itself would be a 2 to 3 lane facility. And just this last year, we've opened up Cecil Road and connected that into Prairie Avenue. So we're seeing increased traffic on that north leg as well. And conceptually, this is what a roundabout would look like at that intersection, the lane configurations being about the same. Estimated budget on this project is about $1.2 million. And again, Urban Renewal Agency is the main funder of this project, and it will address safety and some of the long-term capacity issues. We see that this project would handle traffic beyond the 2035 current design year for our transportation master plan. The next location is down at Mullen Avenue and Cecil Road. In particular, there is a driveway approach over by the Burger King. At that location, between 2016 to 2020, we had over 37 collisions at that location. It is regularly one of our 10 most, well, dangerous, may be an exaggeration on that, but one of the locations with the highest collision rates in the city of Post Falls. Thankfully, there are no fatalities and only a limited number of severe injuries, accidents at that location. We've had some discussions with the Post Falls Police Department and our street department in laying out some of the options on how to address this. What we're looking at doing is putting in a island which would prohibit the businesses between Sugar Maple Drive and Cecil Road from being able to make left turns from the businesses onto Mullen Avenue. We have done traffic counts in those areas to look at what volumes are coming out of those driveways, and we would also include reprogramming of the traffic signal at Cecil and Mullen to better handle the changing traffic patterns. This project has an estimated cost of about $110,000. Again, Urban Renewal Agency is paying for it. It is predominantly a safety improvement, and we think these safety improvements would have at least a 40% improvement on traffic safety in the area. Going across town, Spokane Street and Prairie Avenue. This is actually a fairly large project, and I've divided showing it to you in 2 halves. It's going to include improvements on Spokane Street from Poline Avenue up to Prairie Avenue, and then improvements on Prairie Avenue from Spokane Street over to Cecil Road. On the northern half, some of the major improvements, the first thing we would be doing would be installing a deep sewer in Prairie Avenue between Spokane and Chase. The reason for this is the Water Reclamation Master Plan shows some a 5-year growth area to the northeast of here. If we don't put the sewer in now with this project, because of the depth of it, when we'd come back in 5 or 6 years to put in the sewer, we would end up tearing out all of the roadway that we want to put in. So hopefully that's a wise move for our dollars. After that, we'd be widening Prairie Avenue, and we would be including at the intersection of Prairie and Spokane Street a multi-lane roundabout. This is the conceptual view based upon the design that is now at 95% at that area. It's a multi-lane roundabout, the first multi-lane roundabout that we would have within our community, somewhat similar to what you see on Celtice Way as you get in towards Coeur d'Alene. We would also be widening Prairie Avenue to a 5-lane facility between the Chase Roundabout and Spokane Street. This is conceptually looking at what it would look like, and we would include a landscaped center island between Crown Point Boulevard and Spokane Street. Some of the other improvements would include the decommissioning of 2 lift stations, the Grayling Estates lift station, which is right at the corner of Spokane and Prairie, and then the Prairie Falls 2 lift station, which is over at the intersection of Idaho and Prairie as well. On this northern section, we would also be restriping Spokane Street into a 3-lane roadway with bicycle lanes. On the southern portion, this would be between Grange Avenue and Poline Avenue. Currently, the roadway does not have urban improvements. The road's in fairly rough shape, and what we would be doing would be rebuilding that roadway to put in urban improvements of curb and gutter, sidewalks on both sides, and bicycle lanes as well. This will help improve and maintain capacity in the area, as well as keeping it a safe road. This would actually become only the second portion of roadway with the completion of this project to have a complete pedestrian facility from Prairie Avenue all the ways down to the Spokane River. The other location would be Idaho Street, which goes from Prairie to 4th Avenue. But we're finally starting to get some good pedestrian connectivity through town with these projects. Again, we've got the open house tomorrow night to talk about the 2 projects on Cecil Road, and then on Wednesday, December 8th, to talk about the Prairie and Spokane Street project. And we're hoping to get some good input from the public. We have made some mailers out on the Cecil Road projects. We sent out close to 300 mailers, only got 4 back in the mail, so that's pretty good outreach, and we have had it on the city website as well. Any questions that you have at this time?
Any questions for Rob?
Thank you, Rob.
Again, good information.
You're welcome.
Thank you very much. Next item up is mayor and council comments. I guess from my seat, I would just like to wish everybody a very happy and safe Thanksgiving. Be thankful for what we have, and hopefully we can all begin to enjoy that more, and we'll see a little bit of civility come back into the world as we know it. But if you're traveling, please travel safe, return home safely, and hopefully you can enjoy some time with family. Council comments.
Saturday, Saturday the 20th, which is this coming Saturday, there's a free community turkey dinner, so you can work your way up until Thanksgiving at American Legion Post 143 on Syringa and Poline. They weren't able to do it last year. They did have some volunteers handed out dinners, but so this will be in the dining room and a full meal from noon to 4 p.m. and it's for anyone in the community, so it's free, and go enjoy.
I should mention one other thing, and I believe the date is this coming Saturday.
It is.
For Mark Allert, coach at Post Falls High School, serious health issues. Corby's, Dave Corbeil and his crew out of Corby's is doing a fundraiser. Saturday out there, don't have the times.
2 to 6.
2 to 6, thank you. All I know is Dave told me to show up and bring a checkbook. So anyway, if you're so inclined, show up out of Corby's and help raise some money to help defray the costs that Mark's incurring on medical expense. We do not need an executive session.
We do not.
And you look like you're shivering, so I believe the next motion would be.
Adjourn.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Meeting adjourned.